this is Bob Gourley with Rex Munsee, who is a distinguished 40-year career law enforcement officer, state trooper, and then 12 years as a Clarendon County Sheriff. So he has done all sorts of things. And this is podcast number 119. So what inspired you to go into law enforcement?
Probably my dad. I mean, he was a farmer and picked up bulk milk. But he always thought that state trooper would be a good job because you'd be outside. He never wanted to be stuck inside working in a factory or something like that. And I kind of, as I got older, I thought, that would be a good job. I kind of liked what the state police did. And so I always kind of wanted to be a state trooper.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have 2 older sisters, and they live up around Union City.
And you're originally from Erie?
Well, Erie County. I'm from a little town of Wattsburg, which is like saying you're from Strattonville. It'd be about the same caliber.
Okay. And your great-grandfather was also in...
My great-grandfather, Charles Mulvin, was a deputy for Erie County.
Huh.
Yeah. And I have in my office, I have his original paper driver's license, and I have where he was a special deputy, the certificate that he got from the sheriff.
Were you alive when he was...
Yep, I remember.
So you knew.
His nickname, everybody called him Paw Mulvin.
All right.
And he spelled it like a dog's paw, P-A-W. And he had a little house right in... He moved from the farm when he got older. He lived to be like in his 90s. And he lived right on the corner of Jamestown and the main drag of Wattsburg. And I would go down there sometimes, and every morning he'd walk to the gas station, and he'd buy a newspaper and some snuff, and he'd buy a pack of peppermint lifesavers. And he'd always give me one, and they were kind of hot, I always thought, but I always took one. Paul had a cane, and we'd walk down in the morning to the gas station.
Yeah, he was keeping me active.
Yeah.
So then you were, after you became a state police, you were assigned to Shipmanville?
Yep. Yeah, back then, state police was only 20 weeks. And in your 16th week, you get told where you're going. And I got told I was going to Troop C and going to Shipmanville. And I said, well, that's good because I've heard of that. That's where that college is. And they said, no, that's Shippensburg. And this is Shipmanville. I said, where's Shipmanville? I never heard of it. And they told me Clarendon County. Well, I knew Clarendon because that's where all the wrestlers went from our school. If they had regional or districts, they always ended up at Clarendon. But I'd never been to Clarendon. And so that's where I ended up.
Were you a wrestler?
No. I played basketball and track.
What was it like starting in rural Clarendon County?
Just like home. I realized one of the reasons I never went anywhere, this always seemed to me just like where I grew up.
Can you walk us through a typical day of being a patrol trooper?
Well, depending on what your shift were. I worked a lot of 3 to 11 shift, and then you'd get 8 hours off for sleep, and you'd have 7 to 3 shift, and then you usually had 24 hours off. You came back 3 to 11. But they had what they called triple headers, and if you were going to go into midnights, you'd work a 3 to 11, then you were home, and you worked a 7 to 3. You had 8 hours off, and you came out 11 o'clock at midnight that night.
Which shift was the easier of the 3?
I like 3 to 11 shift because you had time in the morning to get stuff done around your house or around the farm, get stuff caught up or done, and you weren't in a big hurry. You didn't have to get up as early as you normally would. And then 3 to 11, most people are home after 6 o'clock, so you could find people if you were looking for them to interview them or something. And it just kind of more was going on 3 to 11. That was always my favorite shift.
Did you notice differences like when there's a full moon?
I really didn't. The people would say that at the hospital and stuff. Oh, it's a full moon, but sometimes a full moon didn't change anything. And sometimes the darker the moon, you were busy, so it didn't much matter.
Did you ever see a UFO?
No. I might have saw lights in the sky that I didn't know what they were, but I never thought they were a UFO.
What kind of cases stand out during your 27 years?
I had when I got into the criminal unit. See, like for reasons I don't quite understand, I got a lot of sex crimes. And some of the ones that stand out were, I one time had a father who was actually recording his own 2 young daughters in various sexual situations. And we came across the video and we matched it by the wallpaper and the chair and the carpet that it was taking place right in their dining room. We had to get a search warrant and all that. So and as far as I know, that fella is still in jail. It was bad. And then I had some homicide cases, the Jack Fuelhart case.
Oh. I
worked on that. And I had another case in New Bethlehem where they fella shot his girlfriend and ended up, he gave himself up. He was hiding in the cemetery up in New Bethlehem. So I've been involved in some cases that were fairly interesting, and you know, you were glad you. One time I had a major burglary ring. Matter of fact, Roy Gorley's mom. They would hit antique houses with antiques, of which in Clarendon County there's quite a few old farmhouses with those Hoosier cabinets, and these guys, they were from Katanning, and they hit these counties up around here. They even had a box truck, and they'd come in the middle of the night to usually like abandoned houses that were just used for camps in the summer, and they would go in there, and they were both antique dealers, and they'd take the good stuff and fill it up and go. And they worked here in Forest County and Jefferson County and Armstrong County, and we finally broke that case, and they had storage units down to Katanning and Butler just full of stolen stuff. And they sold most of it, the bigger furniture of all places, that would be shipped to California, because old hardwood colonial furniture almost exclusively came from this part of the United States. And out in California, they didn't have the same hardwood that we did, and they had big value out there. Especially those Hoosier cabinets, Hoover cabinets. They were, you know, the ones that had the flower on the side, and huge market for them. This is back in the 90s.
So you did Jack Fuelhart. The person that killed him was adopted, or was it?
It was actually, one was his nephew.
Was it an actual bloodline, or was it a?
Well, it was his. It was some relation of his. They lived down around Kentucky. They weren't, and they had come up, and he had brought a friend of his from Kentucky, and they went up there to. They were on the run. They had just committed an assault in Kentucky, and they thought they'd go there. And things within Jack, of course, was rich, and they went up there and gave into the temptation of, we can steal his car and steal his gun, nobody's going to know. And yeah, that was a strange case, because at first we thought he had passed away from an aneurysm, because his daughter had had an aneurysm, passed away young. And that's kind of, it looked like he hadn't been touched. But just how odd things are, when they shot him, he was sitting in his chair kind of like what I am now. Uh-huh. And they shot him in the back of his head, and there's a spot in your brain that if you hit it, it's just like shutting off a light switch. You don't jump, you don't move, and they just by luck hit that spot. He put his head down like that, and when the maid saw him the next day, she thought he was sleeping in the chair. Wow. Yeah, it was a. And then of course we found. Car came up. One of his cars ended up in Detroit or Flint, Michigan. And like, well, that shouldn't happen. And then things kind of came our way. I kind of call that a fumble recovery. We kind of weren't as good on it in the beginning, but we came through in the end there. And they both got convicted. One guy, I think, probably still doing time. And the other guy, the friend, I think he testified against him, and he didn't get as bad a sentence as his nephew. So,
is there very much pedophilia, like you said?
There's more than you might think. As sad as that is, sometimes it's just kept a dirty little secret that People don't, and I'm not just saying it's something that happened in the 90s. It happened before that, and it's happening now. It's just a sad secret that people have.
When you became a detective and you no longer wore your, you went plain clothes? Or,
Yeah,
so
we were suit and tie.
You didn't have your uniform anymore?
Yeah.
Over your career, you investigated hundreds of cases, including serious ones.
Yeah.
And drug trafficking.
Yeah, I was never as active in drug investigations as some people were. I wasn't in Vice.
Which one of those investigations was, besides ones you already did, really stuck with you, and why?
Well, probably those ones I was talking about, the homicides and that burglary ring, because it was so big. I mean, it was several counties.
How long did they do that burglary ring?
They did that for probably a couple years.
Wow. It
was just one of the things, like, there isn't a good network of troopers talking. I mean, it would go to a patrol trooper and he'd do the report. It might not even get to a criminal investigator's desk because it was just a camp burglary. And it wasn't until we started here in Clarendon County that we got more than we should. And I started seeing, like, they're all kind of a remote old farmhouse used for a camp, and they go in and they don't damage anything. They would take their time and they would set stuff they didn't want set down on the floor to steal, like maybe the table. Where kids would go in and smash stuff, these guys wouldn't. They would take their, I mean, they weren't in and out. They might have been there all night to load that truck.
How did you actually catch them?
We more or less begged the superiors in Munsee. We had a big flow chart on a wall, and we had figured out Monday and Tuesday nights seemed to be the nights most of the burglaries were occurring. And we asked them if we could run around between Cook's Forest and northern Clarendon County and just patrol that area during the night, do nothing but look for them. And I think we did it 2 nights, and of course one of the nights I wasn't there, one of the guys saw a van, this box truck, down over in Jefferson County, up in Cook's Forest, and when he went into the headlights hit, 2 guys ran out the back door, and that was them. And that kind of started the whole ball rolling, license number, and we went down to Katanning and found them and found all this stolen stuff. And some of it was stuff I'd had stolen from other stuff. I recognized it when we got the search warrant to go into the house. It just, things fell our way solely because of there were a bunch of us working on it. And the more they did, the more we would gain information. They didn't know it, but you know, they didn't realize quite how close we were to them, but we didn't know who they were.
You spent a year in Munsee. How did that compare to Clarendon County?
Well, Munsee, I was a corporal. Okay. So I was more working with the men as a supervisor, so I didn't really have as much working on the road. No, I had some. But I didn't mind Jefferson County, but I knew I was only going to be there till I could get back to Clarendon. But it was a good place to work. That's where my son works now, is Punxsutawney. So,
as a corporal supervising troops, what was your approach to mentoring younger officers, and how do you think that prepared them for their careers?
Well, it's kind of like when I got to be a sheriff. I would have a lot of guys that would come to me and they'd say, back in those days, say like 2010, 2011, police departments wanted people with experience. They just didn't want the rookie who just went through the municipal academy. I, on the other hand, was glad to have them. And I'd say to them, you know, come work for me. If you work for me for a year or 2, that's fine, because I know there's better paying jobs out there, but I'll give you a good basis. I'll get you started on the right foot, and then you can, you know, attach your sled anywhere you want. And so I had a number of good, solid guys and women who worked for me, and we'd get them started and show them the ropes and what to do. And a lot of them went into the state police, and some went to Clarendon Borough. I mean, they moved around, but at least I had them for a year or 2 anyhow. So that's kind of how I mentored him. It's just like, come on board and we'll learn you the county and we'll show you. I'll put you with either another deputy or, you know, just to get started.
So when you retired as a corporal, did you do that specifically to run for sheriff?
Yes. State police, you can't hold an elected office and be a state trooper.
What motivated that shift?
Well, I was near to 50,
Okay.
and I've been a trooper for over 27 years, corporal trooper. And I wasn't tired of the job, but I was ready for something different. But yet, what I know best is police work. And this way I thought I kind of like, once again, I'd be in Clarence County. And I thought the job of sheriff would just kind of suit me. I could, for once, not have to run everything up the flagpole to the higher ups. I was kind of the boss. I could make up my mind on things. And that was tempting. So I decided to run. And
Did anybody run against you?
the present sheriff at that time, he
Was it a close race?
it really wasn't, though. When I was running against him, it felt far closer than it ended up being. But it was just one of those things. I'd worked in Clarence County for basically 26 years, other than the year I was down in Munsee. And I have lived here, and my wife is from here, and my kids went to school at Clarence Limestone, and I knew a lot of people. So I called in all the favors that I had, and I said, I need you to vote for me, and the people of Clarence County came through for me. Yes.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, when I first started working, I was working with Bud Wills. He was my coach,
Okay.
and he was introducing me to people in the courthouse.
Okay.
And I went up there and met her boss. She worked for domestic relations. And I saw her sitting there, and I just clicked it away in my mind. When I'm on my own, I'm going to come up and talk to her. And I did, and asked her out, and that was back in '82, and we've been together since.
So like 43 years.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we got married in '83.
One of your main goals as sheriff was increasing the visibility of deputies in the community?
Yes.
Can you share some of your initiatives that help you do that?
Yeah, I told the guys, it just seemed to me that deputies were seen only around the courthouse.
Yes.
And I wanted them to get out. Clarence County is a big county when you're trying to go from Volwinkle to East Brady and Corsica to Hamilton and all points in between. And I just told them, I said, look, if you don't, you don't specifically have to take a prisoner to a court hearing or something. Get in the car and just drive around. Learn the county. Stop in, have a bottle of pop at a little store. Talk to people. That's how you get to know the area, get to know the people. And that's how you solve things, because people will tell you things once they get to know you.
Yes.
If you're unknown to them or they never see you, they don't tell you nothing. But if they see you stop in and you're getting a can of pop at Cleat Rental Store when it was there, or you hit some of these places, they're glad to see you, and you visit a little bit, or I'd say eat your lunch, go to a little restaurant somewhere and sit down and eat. People will talk to you, and that's what we did.
You mentioned about mentoring your deputies and watching them move on to become state troopers or whatever. What was your most rewarding building up your team over your 12 years?
Well, I did, like, my one chief deputy, he left to work as a Titusville patrolman. And my other chief deputy, Katie, she got into the state police, and now she's a polygraph examiner for all Troop C. So, it was good to see people that, they were deputies, but I kind of pushed them on, because I said, you're not wasting your time here, but your talents could be used in the state police.
So you watched them blossom.
Yeah, I said, the academy's not fun, but once you get out of the academy, it's the best job in the world. And like I say, Katie's still on the job. There's still guys that I had as deputies and told them to go, and they're still troopers now.
At one time you served as acting coroner.
Yeah.
What was that experience?
Well, that was a strange thing. I got a call from Mark Aaron, who was a district attorney, in the middle of the night. And he said, Randall Stallman is deceased, or soon to be deceased. They found him laying in Clarenborough. It looked like he slipped on the ice and hit his head. And He's down at the hospital right now. And at that particular time, he had never picked a chief coroner or a deputy coroner. So I went to the hospital right away, and he said through the county code, the sheriff becomes the coroner. I had never heard that. So I went down to the hospital, and sure enough, Randy his core temperature was like in the 60s. And they were trying, but they couldn't save him. So for 3 days, I mean, you've got to have a coroner. You don't think about it, but in that 3 days' time, I had to pronounce him dead. And then in Sligo the next day, the guy who's a coroner now, Dan Shingeldecker, he was working for Randall, and he came with me, and another guy had died of natural causes, and I had to pronounce him dead. And then in the meantime, the commissioners had come up with the person to do it and got the judge to approve everything. And so 3 days I was coroner. It was just one of them strange things that happened, but you have to have a coroner. You don't think about that, but there are people, a coroner, it isn't always a suspicious death or something. There's just sometimes people die and they call the coroner, or there's a bad car crash, or, you've got to have somebody come that removes the body and pronounces them dead.
Did you check to make sure they were dead?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they were dead. But I can't tell you that.
You could see they're dead, but
Yeah.
I mean, did you stick your...
Oh yeah, I listened, but it's just one of those things. I'm certainly not a medical doctor or had training in that, but I mean, I couldn't tell you what their cause of death was. But for the death certificate, you just need the coroner to sign, and that's what I did for 2 people anyhow.
You streamlined the handgun permit process.
Yeah.
And you added equipment like tasers.
Yep.
At no county cost. Which accomplishment are you more proud of from those 3 terms?
Well, I kind of like that we streamlined the pistol. By law, you don't have to give that pistol permit to somebody. You have 40 days. But that was in effect because back in those days, everything was paper records. And the sheriff was supposed to get a hold of each magistrate, plus the Commonwealth Court, and run that name so they would run a check to make sure that person didn't have a criminal record. Well, the sheriff that I ran against, he was still doing that. But at that time, we had the computer checks. And really, once you add the name and when they do that check, when you buy the gun, that's basically all that needs to be done. That does your criminal history plus your mental health background is all tied in together. So I just thought, if they come in, since we're using the same system going through Harrisburg through the PICS check, and why wait 40 days, right? If they're there and it didn't take long, we got a special machine that would pop out your license and laminate it. We would just give it to them right over the counter. Now, if there was a problem, then we'd say to them, we got to do further research or something like that. But for the most part, anybody who came in, and if the machine was running right like it should be, and the PICS check was up, they were probably in and out in 15 minutes.
For the people that were getting, if they had a police record but not a felony record, could they get the pistols? Where was the cutoff?
The cutoff is any felony, you're done.
Yeah,
That's an automatic dismissal. Misdemeanor 1s, you're done. Misdemeanor 2s, it would depend on what it was.
What's the difference between misdemeanor?
Misdemeanor 1 is more serious than a misdemeanor 2. There's 3: misdemeanor 3, misdemeanor 2, misdemeanor 1. A misdemeanor 1 is that 5 years you can get up to.
It's pretty serious.
Yeah, it's up there, right below felony 3.
Okay.
So it would depend. Now some of them, let's just say you were arrested for forgery, which can be a felony or could be a misdemeanor 1 or misdemeanor. There are different degrees of that. Well, since that's not a violent crime, you could get a gun or a permit on that. But say you got arrested for simple assault, that's a misdemeanor 2, and that was violent, you weren't going to get it. So, I mean, That's what Harrisburg does to the state police. If they get a question, they pull out you go into what they call research. And they have 2 weeks to research to tell you, yes, you can get the gun or the permit, or no, you can't. And they'll get a hold of whatever county and say to the clerk, go through the records and say, what was he convicted for? Not really what he was charged with, but what did he get convicted for? And that's how they decide.
Having served through the 80s, through the 20s, how has the policies changed, like technology and everything else?
Well, when I first came on the job, there was no such thing as DNA. There you had blood types, and you could maybe match that the blood at the scene was type A, and maybe your suspect had type A. And that's the closest you could get. And so you would go to court and say, the blood that was found was type A, and the suspect's blood was and that was it.
When
so
did they come around with the DNA?
The DNA came around probably in the early 90s. Became really developed, I'd say, probably in the early 2000s, where you could actually find blood, run it, and it's going to come back and say it's 5 billion to 1 that it's you. I mean, the odds are just astronomical when they make a match of that.
In your 40 years, were drugs worse then, now?
When I started out, cocaine was the big drug in the 80s. Maybe it's because of Miami Vice and Don Johnson and all that, you know. Cocaine was the drug of choice. And marijuana back in those days was basically twigs and weeds. There was nothing, it wasn't very potent. And then marijuana has always kind of stayed fairly constant. But cocaine went out of style, and then it became more, they were using the heroin, and that came back, and that for a while, nobody touched heroin because it was so deadly. And then the heroin came back, and then fentanyl, a derivative of that, and the opioids really. And some of that had to do with a lot of medical doctors were prescribing opioids basically like they were aspirin. And you got a lot of people that were hooked on that really weren't drug users, but they got addicted through prescriptions, and then they wanted their drugs one way or the other.
That guy up at Clarion prescribed more of that drugs than anybody in the whole United States.
East of the Mississippi, he was the biggest prescriber of pills of anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about meth?
Meth right now is not, there for a while meth was, people were cooking on their own. I'd say in the late, like 2009 to 2012, people were cooking it on their stove, and you were running into it. The fumes are so bad it gets into the carpet, and you can get reactions from it. Now all that seems to be made like in Mexico or whatever, and nobody cooks it anymore. They can buy it cheaper than what they can cook it.
Have you or any of your partners been exposed to meth?
The only one I know a trooper on a midnight shift that he had the gloves on, but there was a tear in his gloves, and he got exposed to well, I don't know if it was fentanyl, but what you can be in. He started getting like the shakes, and they had to go and he went to the Clarion ER, his partner took him and got the Knox line up his nose, and it went away. Yeah. So I mean, that stuff it's deadly. It's just and people like you and I that aren't used to it, where our tolerance is zero, just a touch of it. I mean, just a minute portion will kill us.
I've never seen it, but I hear it's so powerful that like a mother will abandon her newborn baby for
they get addicted that bad, yeah.
Yeah, that's really.
But I mean, it's just the craving for it is just powerful, but the effects of it on people is, you wouldn't think. You and I didn't grow up where you had to where somebody gave you a bare aspirin. In the back of your mind, you didn't think, hey, maybe they've got fentanyl in this. It wasn't there. Yeah. Nowadays, I would caution any kid, any person, unless you got that prescription yourself and you got out of the bottle, unless it was a family member, I would never take anything from a friend or somebody who just said, here, try this pill, it's this, because you've no idea what's in it.
Public respect for law enforcement's been shifting.
Yeah.
Is it shifting here in Clarendon County too?
I don't think in Clarendon County, too bad. But as we see on the news in Minnesota and California, places where they're just, I mean, when you are against, say, the federal government, ICE or Border Patrol and all that, it leaches down into just state troopers and local police and everything else. They think you're out to get them, and your word doesn't mean anything, and it's just like body cameras. Yeah, they're nice, but they're more or less saying, like, you can't believe that officer's word. It used to be you could go somewhere, and if it was your word against somebody else's word, and you said, I saw him run the stop sign, and the other guy said, I didn't, the magistrate would more or less agree with the police officer, or you wouldn't have bothered to pull him over and write him up the ticket. Now, everybody wants to see the camera. So your word basically has no value anymore like it did 40 years ago, which is sad. Because I know one of the corporals that was a corporal when I was there, his name was Dave Hauser. He told me in a small county like this, if you lose your word, if people think you're caught in a lie on the stand, or you're done.
Yes.
They'll never trust you again. He was 100% right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Really, tell the truth.
tell the truth, because you're better. You can deal with the truth far better than a lie.
You're 40 years with a badge. Have you ever been shot at?
Nope.
Have you ever had to shoot anybody?
Nope.
That's nice. What's one thing you tell yourself, your younger self, if you're going to start over again?
Oh boy. Probably sold away more money for retirement.
Okay, you retired in 22, and you started a private detective business,
Yeah.
and are you still doing that?
Yep. Still doing that.
Do you still go into, like, you've also been helping with the schools around here?
Yeah, I sub-teach at Clarendon Limestone.
You do that once in a
Yeah.
while? Now with your free time and the farm and hunting, what's it like?
I enjoy retirement. I mean, it is nice to have, you look out and you see a snowstorm, and like, all I got to do is go a tenth of a mile down the road to feed the pigs, and maybe a mile the other way to feed the cows. So I don't have to worry about being on I-80 and somebody in a Yugo with summer tires who's going 80 miles an hour and from California, and next thing he's in a snow, and you've got all the I-80 tied up.
Did you run into, or what's the experience around here with illegals?
Really, on the interstate, you would see it because they're passing through. But here, I never run into anybody who
There's not a lot of illegals right here.
yeah.
Okay. How about your impression on Charlie Kirk?
Till he got assassinated, I had seen him on Fox News. He was just another person that they interviewed now and again. I never had listened to him. I never read a book of his. I didn't know what Turning Point was. I've learned all that since. He seemed like a pretty decent guy to me, but I learned all this after he was killed.
As a state trooper turned sheriff, what's the weirdest call you've ever responded to?
Oh my. Well, one time I responded to a call where the woman said there were people in her house. So another guy came down to assist me, and it was over towards Old Ann Trail off that side. And I got to the house, and this old lady, old farmhouse, came to the door and said, hey, you called. They still, yeah, they're still here. So we pulled our guns and went in there, and we're looking, opening doors and buying couches, and there's nobody here. Oh, yes, they are. There they go right there. They're going through the wall. I mean, she just was. And you didn't realize that till you were with her for a little bit, that she was a little senile.
How about with farm animals? Like, any unusual things with farm animals?
I've shot 2 black bears on the interstate that were hit but weren't dead,
Okay.
and then wait for the game warden to come. I've shot numerous deer.
How about cows? Bulls? Nothing like that?
I've shot them on my farm, but I don't think I've ever shot one with somebody else's.
Okay. What's the funniest misunderstanding you've had with a suspect or
Oh,
something?
sure. Well, I've had, cases of, one time years ago, when the Pizza Hut was across from the Shippenville station, the waitress called over and said, "There's a guy here, don't want to leave, and he's harassing me." So I went over and talked to the guy, and he was, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to leave." Well, when he went out to his car and ran the license number, he came back and it was stolen. So I arrested him, put him in jail, and the next day when I came in, I didn't have much time on the job. The crime corporal to me, Frank Barron, he said, "How do you know that he was in that car?" Well, I said, that car was stolen. And he said, "Did you see him in the car?" "No, I didn't see him in the car." He said, "You better get some more. You got him in there, and you don't have a very good case." So my partner was Jim Parker that night. So we went in the car and we found a bag, like a gym bag, and it had in the shoe, it said Joe Torpy. But that wasn't the name of the guy. He had a license, he had a driver's license from a guy in Brookville. And I remember thinking when we crossed over the river bridge, the guy said, "What's the name of this bridge?" And I thought, well, it's funny, you're from Brookville, you don't know the River Hill Bridge. I mean, this was the old River Hill Bridge, not the new one.
Okay.
And we got some checking on that name Joe Torpy. Here he was escapee from Ohio. He'd walked off of not a railroad, but when they have a work release program. And they were looking for him. He had just stopped at like a Salvation Army and had got a jacket. And the jacket happened, of all things, to have a wallet with an ID from a guy from Brookville who had died. He was dead. And so it came out that that was a stolen car, and he was a wanted felon, but all this fell in my lap. I mean, it wasn't because I knew all this when I put him in jail. And we were just trying to save myself from embarrassment, and it all came out to the good. So I kind of learned you need to have a little bit more than just what you think. There was enough there to charge, but there wasn't enough there to win. So I learned a lesson from Jim Parker and from Frank Barron, the corporal, that sometimes you still got to have evidence, even though you know what you got.
So, are you still an avid reader?
Yeah,
And you still collect comic books?
still do.
And which comic book character would help us most in Clarendon County?
Oh well, that Batman would be the one you'd want.
Okay. From trooper to sheriff to private investigator, have you ever considered writing a detective novel?
I've considered it, and I have written some short stories, but they were more just total fiction. There was a club I used to belong to that just recently folded, and it was like what they call a fanzine. You could send artwork or pictures or stories, and there was like 10 of us in this group, and one guy would put them all together and then mail them out quarterly. And you never knew what you were going to get. I mean, it cost like $3 an issue. You just paid the postage. But we went to 60 issues, and then I think all of us were in our 60s or 70s, and it just kind of went to phone. But no, I've thought of it, but there's stuff you've got to find a publisher, you got to find an editor, and all that.
Do you still hunt?
Yeah.
What's your most epic one that got away?
Oh, it got away. Oh, I've had a lot get away. It wasn't too many years ago. I had a big buck come up on the farm, and I was sitting down in a lawn chair, and I had my 35 Whalen pump, and I just got that. I bet I shot 6-7 times at the thing standing. I never hit it once.
It didn't even run.
No, I thought that was the last time I went on a hunt with a 35 wailing. And it probably was me, but I lost confidence in that gun. I went back to my 284 Browning, which always seems to do good for me.
What was the best? Do you ever go out west hunting? Or anything?
No.
What was the best deer you got around here?
So on the farm, I got a nice 8-point one time, and then one time, my son and daughter have gotten some nice buck over the farm, but I've never really had the big wall hanger ever come my way.
8-point.
Yeah, and it was nothing spectacular. It was an 8-point. We have a bin in my garage where we throw the horns. I mean, they weren't worth getting mounted.
What do you think your great-grandfather would think of the modern policing?
He'd be just amazed. There's no doubt in my mind. He'd be more amazed at the way they do farming now too. See, round bales back then, you might have saw the little round bales. He would have been amazed at these big round bales or the big square bales, which have made it so nice for beef cows. I mean, you just run them out there with a forklift, or, spear. It's really kind of changed farm. And one guy can just about do all the hand. You don't need a baler and a wagon and kids to unload it and all that stuff that you and I did when we were growing up. Round bale and you move it, one person can do it all.
In your years in the sheriff world and state police, what was the most dramatic escape attempt?
Well, it really wasn't an attempt. That one time when I was a trooper, that Shankowski climbed up the chain link fence and got out.
So when that actually
when that happened, yeah, cause then we got called out, and he was on the run for 4 or 5 days. And it wasn't just like here. They caught him one time. They saw him out in Ohio. They had a chase. I mean, he was bad, that Shankowski. And he ended up somehow in Florida. That's where he finally they wanted him. He was wanted in Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania.
How long did he escape for?
I think he was probably out for 4 or 5 days. Yeah. I mean, he ended up driving right by Gene Hoover's farm on a flatbed truck. Yeah, I mean, he was down around there in Limestone, where the old Limestone Park, down around there. He broke into a place down there, yeah.
What was your, everybody has an excuse. What was the best excuse you heard for speeding?
Oh, I always kind of like the excuses where somebody would tell you, like, I got to go to the bathroom. I think we've all been there. I usually like that one I would buy. You got to go to the bathroom and then get out of here. Me holding you back isn't doing you any good.
Well, I really appreciate you sitting for this interview.
No.
Is there any other things you would like to, suggestions for life?
No.
You're doing a little bit of preaching now.
Yeah, I've been doing that for 20-some years at various churches that out here in the country, and little churches can't afford a full-time minister.
Yes.
So Don Hamilton used to preach down there at Brockville at the Presbyterian Church, and he was our minister, and of course he can't be there all the time. And one time he wasn't going to be there, and Nancy Chandler went there, and she said to me, "Rex, why don't you do a sermon?" And I said, "Oh, Nancy," I said, I probably can do one. She said, "Okay." So she got me to do it, and I went to Don Hamilton, and he gave me the stuff he said in between his sayings and all that, and I wrote all that down, and I did one. Well, of course, Don needed another day off sometime, and Nancy came back, and said, "Can you do another one?" So, you get started, and I actually do enjoy it. You really get to learn a lot about the Bible when you're trying to bring messages out in it, and the Old Testament, and so it's been useful for me. It's made my faith stronger, and I enjoy doing it.
There's been some talk about Israel and the Jewish, and Christians seem to always be for Israel, but they're not sure. Now it seems like they're not sure whether they like Netanyahu's.
Yeah.
attempts. Do you have any opinion on any of that stuff?
I just look, according to the Bible, the Jewish people are the chosen people.
Yes.
And they've been through a lot in, 2,000 and some years between Hitler and everything else. And they're still there, and they always seem to win. So I give them a wide berth. I mean, I have nothing against Jewish people, and I'm on their side because I just have a feeling they are the chosen people. So,
Well, I think most Christians are with Israel. It's sometimes their representatives are a little bit more challenging.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, just like the Roman Catholics, sometimes the Pope's a little bit more
Yeah.
liberal than people aren't always sure about that. So, thank you very much, and this will be. If anybody likes it, hit that like button.
Oh.
Thank you.